CripMac was released from prison today on his birthday via Lupe.
It was supposed to be his birthday. His Freedom Day. The self-proclaimed 55th Street General was finally set to touch down. Mac had already been processed for release. But before he could even take a full breath of free air, county deputies stepped in, cold steel cuffs snapping back onto his wrists. And those cuffs? That was only the beginning. What happened next left the internet absolutely stunned. January 30th, 2026. Lock that date into the timeline of internet rap history. Because what unfolded that day felt less like real life and more like a Hollywood twist, the kind critics would reject for being too unrealistic. Too calculated. Too grimy. Trevor Hurd, known worldwide as Mac, the unfiltered, face-tatted voice of 55th Street. A man who transformed raw gang culture, chaotic jailhouse stories, and street dialogue most people wouldn't dare repeat, into a digital movement. He was scheduled to walk out of those federal doors a free man. Fate seemed poetic. Freedom landing on the exact day his mother brought him into this world. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone following the CripMac saga. For supporters, it felt cosmic, almost scripted by the universe itself. Then confirmation spread like wildfire. Lupe God and close affiliates signaled the news first. Word traveled fast, the general was coming home. No Jumper amplified it to millions of followers. Instagram Reels flooded timelines with celebration clips. The energy was electric. It was the kind of collective exhale you only see when someone the internet has watched, debated, criticized, defended, finally appears to catch a break. Or so everyone thought.
CripMac was released from prison today on his birthday via Lupe.
But before we get to the gut punch, and make no mistake, it hits like a freight train coming around a blind corner, you need to understand what put this man in a federal cage in the first place. Because once you see the full scope of his legal entanglement, what happened next feels less shocking, and more inevitable. Trevor Hurd was serving a 33-month federal sentence, 2 years and 9 months, for possession of ammunition as a convicted felon. That charge stemmed from a September 2023 arrest, when law enforcement recovered a so-called ghost gun on his person, an untraceable firearm with no serial number, loaded with live rounds. And this was a man already carrying a felony record. For prosecutors, that's leverage. For defense attorneys, that's a nightmare. According to reporting from Billboard, U.S. Marshals executed the federal arrest the moment state charges were dropped, a seamless jurisdictional handoff that felt almost cinematic. One system released him, the other was waiting at the door. Here's the twist. The ghost gun's firing pin was defective. The weapon could not actually discharge. That mechanical flaw narrowed the case dramatically. Federal prosecutors moved forward on ammunition possession instead, sidestepping what could have escalated into far more serious exposure, including potential RICO scrutiny tied to alleged organized gang activity. He pleaded guilty in April 2024. He was sentenced in August. Case closed, at least on paper. But widen the lens. Because Trevor Hurd did not appear in federal court out of nowhere. His record traces back to 2014, felony arrests including attempted second-degree armed robbery, grand theft, and transporting controlled substances. This wasn't a single misstep. It was a pattern shaped by environment. South Central Los Angeles. 55th Street affiliation. In that world, loyalty can be protection, and a trap at the same time. Economic options were limited. Illegal paths didn't always feel like choices. Sometimes they felt like the only unlocked doors. By 2021, Hurd had already violated probation, served prior stints, lost a tooth in a violent jail altercation, and navigated the suffocating politics of incarceration, where aligning with your faction isn't optional. It's survival. A GoFundMe organized by Andrew Callahan of Channel 5 referenced a schizophrenia diagnosis in support of his legal defense. For casual viewers, that detail put clinical language to what many had already observed. The manic surges of energy. The abrupt tonal shifts. Moments of raw vulnerability cracking through the bravado, like daylight slicing through a prison window. And all of that context matters. Because when January 30th arrived, none of this history stayed buried.
I'm like, oh, he looking good.
That reaction, the surprise at seeing Hurd post-release looking healthy, steady, intact, says more about us than it does about him. Because when someone walks out of prison, the unspoken expectation isn't restoration. It's damage. We expect deterioration. We're shocked by survival. And for one brief, almost cinematic window on January 30th, it genuinely looked like this survival story might land on a hopeful note. The general was home. 55th Street celebrated. And then the system moved. The moment Heard stepped out of federal custody, deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department were waiting. He was immediately taken into custody on a state probation violation tied to that same 2023 gun case. Not the next morning. Not after a meal. Not after a hug from family. Immediately. A flash hold. A transfer to county jail. Potentially up to 90 additional days behind bars. No jumper broke down the full rearrest details, and the internet, which had been celebrating hours earlier, erupted. X timelines filled with confusion. Anger. Conspiracy theories. Some claimed it was a coordinated setup, rivals tipping off authorities at the last possible second. Others pointed at the system itself, arguing that a highly visible, face-tattooed figure with a massive online platform was never going to be allowed a clean exit. And then there were the darker whispers. Theories suggesting the rearrest was cover for something more sinister, that the smoke surrounding the situation wasn't metaphorical at all. In a matter of hours, a birthday freedom story turned into another chapter of uncertainty. And once again, the general wasn't walking.
You still
His
think,
probation says he can't drink?
you think he gonna be just getting drunk?
That question, casual as it might sound, is actually a scalpel, cutting straight to the heart of what life after release looks like for someone in Heard's shoes. Probation conditions: no drinking. No associating with known gang members. No entering certain areas. No doing the very things that have defined the entirety of the life you've ever known. These rules aren't designed for success. They're designed for measurement. To ensure that when you fail, as the system fully expects, there is a clean, undeniable paper trail documenting your noncompliance. The question about drinking? It's not really about alcohol. It's a test. A test of whether a man who has spent his entire adult life swinging between cells and streets can suddenly adopt the kind of monastic discipline probation demands, when he's never been given the tools, the resources, or the environment to practice that discipline in the first place. In other words, the system isn't just watching. It's betting. And the odds, historically, are stacked against survival.
I got violated like 2-3 times hanging with 4X's.
That right there is the confession, surgical, precise, devastating, that mirrors Heard's situation perfectly. Violated for associating with gang members. Think about what that means in the real world. You grow up in a neighborhood where everyone you know, childhood friends, cousins, people who had your back when no one else did, is affiliated. The system says freedom. The conditions say isolation. You cannot exist in both worlds. And the system knows it. Which is why recidivism rates stay high. Which is why the revolving door of incarceration keeps spinning. Which is why a man like Trevor Heard, 55th Street tattooed on his body, embedded in his identity, is perpetually one conversation, one handshake, one Instagram live away from being back in a cell. That is not rehabilitation. That is a trap with a timer. Now let's break down the title, because this is where the story cracks open into something far uglier than a probation hold, and far more revealing than any court document. Heard instantly smoked after his release. That word detonated across timelines, group chats, and comment sections where hip-hop and street culture collide. In the rap media ecosystem, where death hoaxes circulate as reliably as weather reports, where bodies drop with disturbing consistency, and where any claim of a casualty triggers instant belief, the claim needed no proof, no source, no confirmation. All it needed was a name people recognized, and a verb that made their blood run cold. The facts, however, told a very different story. There is zero verified evidence that Trevor Heard was killed following his federal release. Not law enforcement. Not family. Not associates who had been filming his release just hours earlier. What actually happened? The immediate rearrest by LA County on state probation charges created a vacuum of information, a sudden silence where celebration footage had been, and the internet filled that vacuum with its worst instincts: paranoid, catastrophic, addictive. When Heard vanished from public view after release, when homecoming posts stopped and silence stretched from hours to days, people assumed the worst. Smoked could mean killed. It could mean humiliated, roasted online. It could even mean high. The linguistic ambiguity became fuel. Social media became the spark. By the time the truth about the probation hold surfaced, the death rumor had already metastasized into a full-blown urban legend. This isn't unique to Heard. It's how the internet treats black rappers with gang affiliations. Viral death hoaxes have haunted the rap world for years. Every time a rapper goes quiet, jail, rehab, mental health break, or even 48 hours offline, the rumor mill activates like clockwork. The real murder of Drakeo, a key figure in LA's Once Upon a Time scene in 2021, supercharged the paranoia. Silence from any gang-affiliated artist triggers the same fearful calculus: no posts equals something happened, equals he's gone. Add to that confusion the unfortunate reality of overlapping names. Matt Critter, a completely separate individual, faced murder charges in the same window. Fans conflated the two. Media outlets covering gang culture often missed the nuance, turning Heard into a viral casualty in misinformation slurry. In reality, he was sitting in an LA County holding facility, probably watching his own death rumor trend behind plexiglass. February 2, 2026, the next act in court. The judge held the power to revoke his probation entirely, potentially sending him back for the remainder of his federal sentence. Months, maybe years, buried in the system. That worst-case scenario didn't happen. After arguments from both sides, the hold was sustained briefly, and then, on February 21, 2026, Heard walked out. Not a false start. Not a bait-and-switch. Actual freedom. Physical, documented. Video captured the emotional release, stepping into open air, overwhelmed, raw footage transforming a man into a symbol whether he wanted it or not. Welcome home reels flooded Instagram and TikTok. In a single news cycle, the narrative pivoted from tragedy to triumph, exactly how the internet consumes black men from the streets. Either eulogizing or deifying them, with zero bandwidth for the messy, human, complicated middle ground where a man just wants to eat a plate of Popeyes without a headline chasing him.
I had to go to the judge and tell him what was going on, like, hey, because they were trying to violate me for living in the hood.
That clip lays bare the skeletal truth of the legal system, the same truth that shaped every second of Heard's post-release life. Gang injunctions. Court-ordered restrictions. Rules dictating where documented gang members can live, who they can associate with, what hours they can be outside, what streets they can walk. Invisible electric fences. They keep people like Heard perpetually trapped, technically free on paper, but incarcerated in reality. You're on probation. You're a documented member of the 55th Street neighborhood Crips. You live in the neighborhood that carries your set's name. Your mere existence in your own zip code can trigger a violation. Your presence in the community you grew up in can become probable cause. Your life, the way you've always lived it, is now criminalized. Legal challenges have attempted to dismantle these injunctions, arguing they are fundamentally unconstitutional. Some have even succeeded. But the system adapts. It renames the same restrictions under new bureaucratic labels and keeps the machinery of containment running, just under a fresh coat of paint. In short, freedom can exist on paper, but in practice, the cage never opens.
It has, because people have filed lawsuits on it already.
The media dynamics around Heard's story added yet another combustible layer to the situation. Accusations emerged that Adam 22 had systematically exploited Heard's arrest, release, rearrest cycle for content, mining the worst moments of a black man's life for views, engagement, metrics, and ad revenue. Critics extended that scrutiny to the broader ecosystem, arguing that white content creators documenting gang culture, including Andrew Callahan, despite his legitimate advocacy through the GoFundMe Legal Defense Fund, were participating in a long-standing pattern of commodifying black pain for largely non-black audiences. Whether those critiques are fully accurate or not, they articulate a real, measurable tension. The CripMac story generates tens of millions of impressions across platforms, yet the vast majority of the infrastructure profiting from those impressions, the platforms, the channels, the media companies, the advertisers, bears little resemblance to the man whose suffering fuels the content. So what about the General's next chapter? Where does Trevor Heard, aka __Mac, the 55th Street General, the man the internet spent 3 weeks alternating between mourning and celebrating, stand right now? As of February 22, 2026, the day after his verified, confirmed, no takebacks release from LA County custody, the answer is simple: free. Not metaphorically free. Not conditionally free on bail or in some transitional program that counts as freedom only on paper. Free. Walking. Breathing unregulated air. Making his own calls on what to eat, when to sleep, for the first time in years. His Instagram at 55th Street is live and active, flooded with post-release content, homecoming footage, live streams, early rumblings of new heat, interviews circulating on No Jumper and affiliated channels. The tone across it all is a familiar cocktail: gratitude and defiance. Anyone who's done time recognizes it at a molecular level. Thankful to be standing outside. Heated about the years the system stole. Locked in on reclaiming what was lost. And fully aware that just because the door cracked open, the machine hasn't retreated. The shadows are patient. Hurd's affiliation with the 55th Street neighborhood Crips isn't a chapter he closed in prison. It's on his face. It's in his Instagram handle. It's the identity that built his fame, generated his audience, and created his brand. And it's the same identity that keeps law enforcement surveillance locked on him, relentless as an algorithm. The beefs with Hoovers, with Bloods, with rival __ factions, who see his internet celebrity as a violation of street protocol, did not vanish while he was inside. They fermented. Disciplinary incidents before incarceration, actions by his own gang for perceived violations of internal codes, including beatdowns that went viral, remain permanently indexed online, searchable by anyone with a grudge and a phone. His OPG goblin persona, confrontational, incendiary, designed for clicks, is a double-edged sword. His greatest commercial asset and his most dangerous personal liability. Inextricable. Unstoppable. Defining every part of his existence.
It ain't never coming off. You remove tattoos, you might as well put a dress on.
That line, it's the thesis, compressed into a single, unflinching sentence. The tattoos stay. The affiliation stays. The identity is non-negotiable. It cannot be erased. It is not a costume to shed when cameras stop rolling or when a probation officer starts asking questions in a system that explicitly demands disassociation as a precondition for freedom. Stop claiming you're set. Stop posting gang content. Stop associating with known members. Stop being who you fundamentally are. Hurd's refusal to erase himself is both an act of cultural defiance and a self-imposed obstacle to the clean, compliant, repentant narrative the courts want to see. Every probation officer reviewing his social media sees a man the system deems unrehabilitated. Every judge scrolling through his Instagram sees recidivism loading in real time. And every fan sees something the system cannot quantify: authenticity. The rarest, most bankable commodity in the attention economy. That authenticity is why the channel grew. Why streams generate revenue. Why merchandise moves. Why his estimated net worth still sits somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, even after prison drained a significant portion. The prison experience itself became content, and potent content at that. Phone calls from federal custody discussing fights with rival factions. Adapting to the rhythms of institutional life with braids and forced positivity. Navigating the internal politics of incarceration, where alliances with groups like the Mexican Mafia could mean the difference between safety and the infirmary. Hot New Hip Hop documented his sentencing in exhaustive detail, and the comment sections became a referendum on a question no one can fully resolve. Is Trevor Hurd a victim of systemic targeting, a black man from South Central whose zip code predetermined his path through the criminal justice system? Or is he a man reaping the consequences of choices he made fully aware of the risks? The honest answer: both can be true simultaneously. Systemic oppression and personal responsibility are not mutually exclusive. And the internet? It absolutely does not have the emotional or intellectual bandwidth to hold both truths at once.
Dillinger like, oh, there's Jap. And I'm like, Cud, where Cud? Cud next door already wrapping his hands up and ready.
Prison fights. Beef settled with wrapped fists behind concrete walls. Someone next door is already preparing for violence before the confrontation is even verbalized. That is the world Hurd navigated for years. And it is the world whose reflexes and instincts he carries back onto the streets of South Central. The question that matters now, the only question, is this. Can survival mode, the setting that kept him alive inside, coexist with the freedom mode his fans want to see, his family needs to see, and his future demands? Can the man who described settling institutional scores with violence pivot to studio sessions, brand partnerships, and active fatherhood without the gravitational pull of the streets dragging him backward? Can the legal system, probation officers, mandatory check-ins, gang injunctions, social media surveillance, actually allow him space to become something other than what his criminal file says he is? The immediate future is loaded with both promise and peril, roughly in equal measure. Post-release interviews are already circulating, generating engagement numbers that make platform algorithms salivate. New music is in the pipeline. Heard has teased tracks and collaborations primed to capitalize on the massive global attention his rearrest saga generated. Documentary interest hasn't cooled. Callahan's Channel 5 coverage laid the groundwork for a potential feature-length treatment that could hit major festivals. But the flip side is just as sharp. Diss tracks from active rivals like Milk 74 continue to circulate, keeping beefs warm that Heard may not have the luxury to ignore. Probation conditions mean any misstep, a failed drug test, an association deemed inappropriate, a social media post interpreted as gang activity, sends him directly back to custody, no new arrest required. And the mental health challenges that predated his fame, the schizophrenia, the bipolar episodes described by associates, do not take vacations just because cameras are rolling and streams are climbing. What makes Trevor Heard's story resonate beyond viral content and gang spectacle is the universality beneath the face tattoos, set claims, and ghost gun charges. At its core, it's a story about a human being seeking belonging, founded in the only institution that would accept him without conditions. A man who sought respect and earned it through violence because that was the only currency his environment recognized. A man who sought fame and achieved it through radical transparency, only to discover that visibility generates both income and scrutiny, law enforcement attention, rival focus, media exploitation, and an audience consuming his pain as entertainment while debating empathy versus accountability. He fed homeless neighbors between stints in custody. He wept for his grandmother during court appearances live-streamed to millions. He jokes about Popeye's chicken while carrying psychiatric diagnoses that would challenge anyone's stability in a comfortable suburban home, let alone inside a federal cell or on streets where his face functions simultaneously as a billboard, a brand, and a target. This is survival. This is spectacle. This is freedom on borrowed time. If you want to stay caught up on every move, every post, every drop, click on any of the cards on your screen, and watch the saga continue.